Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. All right, I am here today with a introductory look at Journey to the Overland, and we're going to be focusing on the second edition. Journey to the Overland is a very fascinating game. I think it's best described as, imagine if you were playing somebody's hack of a game that has already been released, and they've kind of created all of these house rules and subsystems to make that game a solo game. And really that is what this game feels like. It is definitely a labor of love from its creator, Dino C. Ware. I remember reading or hearing him talk about how this has kind of evolved from a game that he played when he was a young kid or teenager, and it has just been kind of growing and expanding throughout the years. And it was just kind of like his world of make-believe, his rules that governed that world of make-believe, and he has kind of codified those, he has collected those and put them together into his massive single player RPG solo kind of open world hex crawl, in which you are going to create a character, and they're going to start in a certain town, and they are going to journey to the Overland, throughout the Overland, different regions, different locations. They can sail the seas, join guilds, learn new skills, and develop their character and have random adventures, and just kind of create this great kind of fantasy story. And it's quite fascinating. It is, I think, kind of a hard game to get into, and I do recommend watching Dino's his series. He has a few playthroughs on his YouTube channel, and I will post links to those. Now, also, the game is available to purchase right now as either a late backer. I think right now you can get the base game. He is still working on things from his last Kickstarter, the Journey to the Overland. I think it was called like the second edition, or Return to the Overland, the Redux or Redo. I will post a link to the late pledge link that you can go and decide on anything that you want to purchase. I was not a backer. I backed at $1 and then I never completed my pledge. But last year I bought a used version of the second edition from BGG, and it came with the cards that I needed to play and the map and everything. So that is what I am playing. Now I do want to show one thing. So my version did come with an older paperback version of the first edition. Now I don't think I've ever seen such a discrepancy in size between a first edition and second edition game. So this first edition here is 170 pages, and here is it compared to the second edition. Dino basically expanded upon every it feels like he expanded almost upon every single page of the first edition and made his uber ultimate edition here with this second edition that clocks in at almost 600 pages of information. Now, it can be a somewhat difficult game to learn. I don't think any of the concepts or the mechanisms themselves are difficult, but what makes it a little difficult is just there literally are rules on like every single page of this book, but you are not meant to read through it from cover to cover and then play the game. You want to read the beginning section and then just kind of start playing it, start kind of stumbling your way into the adventure, and as you come to a section that you need to look it up either using the exhaustive table of contents or the index. Now, there are some issues that I have found in that approach, because there are some things that either they are named slightly differently or they're just not included in either of those the table of contents or the index. And so it has made looking up some things more difficult than I would like it to be. So we will talk a little bit about that. So in this video, we're just going to be doing kind of an introduction, a quick introduction. I'm going to make a character off screen or off camera. We'll come back and take a look at the character I've made and kind of what we're going to be doing with that character. Then I'll play a bit and then I'll come back with some wrap-up thoughts. So it's probably going to be like a 3-video series. But in this book, you're going to get a nice introduction. You have a huge table of contents that just has so much stuff that walks you through everything. There is a lot to this game, a lot to this world that he has created, that he has been creating over the years. And you get an introduction to the revised 2nd edition, a little introduction to the world. Now, one thing, this game really does feel like, the world feels like one of those, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's kind of a subgenre of fantasy, and that would be like safe for Christians fantasy from the 70s and 80s. You guys, I've talked about that before with my Mertwig's Maze video about how, fantasy was very popular in the 70s and 80s. And that had a lot to do with kind of a resurgence of Lord of the Rings, and thanks to the animated cartoons, animated movies, and also Dungeons and Dragons. But there was a large subset of people in the United States, evangelical Christians, that completely rejected Dungeons and Dragons, thought it was evil, but they still wanted to participate in the fun of fantasy. And so there were a few fantasy things that were deemed safe for Christians to participate in. And there was also a whole cottage industry of authors who were making safe for Christian fantasy works. There were things like, for some reason, Sword of Shannara, Terry Brooks was considered a safe for Christian fantasy. And then, of course, you had Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and a few others. And then you had these kind of more like really Christian-based fantasies that were sold at like Bible stores and Christian stores. This does feel like that. It is, the world, the lore is very much based in, or at least stems from, a lot of Christian mythology. You have angels and archangels, and the angels are actually named like they would be in the Bible. You have, Saint Gabriel, Saint Raphael, Saint Cassiel, and different saints and that kind of thing. So there are also some things where like marriage is possible in the game, but the rules state that a man can only marry a woman. I'm not sure if there's like a lot of conservative thought in this game or not. That is the only place where I've seen it in the rules, like codified in the rules. I'm not sure why a man can only marry a woman in the game. Dino just wanted that in his world. You could probably house rule that, because marriage and divorce are like parts of the game. There are rules for that kind of thing. There are rules for so many things in this game, for building roads to connect places, just buying property, and like I said, it's like one thing laid after another to make this whole world. But the background is pretty interesting. And then you get a little introduction to solo role playing. You could play this with the game master, but it's designed not to be. And one of the golden rules of the game is something that Dino calls the rumor theory, and that is how information spreads throughout the Overland. And he gives you a few rules to dictate how fast and how far information travels, to where you can guide NPCs to or from your character or points of interest without needing a GM. And then you get a whole history of the Overland, which is pretty interesting. I enjoyed reading it. Again, like I said, it does feel like it is has a lot of basis in Western religion. But then you also get all kinds of crossovers, so you can definitely tell that Dino was into all kinds of weird, different mythologies around the world, and kind of mixed them all together to create his world. And it is kind of how the world of Overland is structured in the lore. It is a world that has multiple histories, and multiple peoples have come and go into the land and have influenced the world and how it is shaped. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. Now, you may be noticing that a lot of the art is not printed in the right resolution, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if I have like a misprinted book, or if that was just the way it was sent to the publishers, but some of the graphics are really hard to make out. There's this map at the end of the book here that, I mean, you can't even hardly read the map. So I don't know if I have like a misprinted book or not, or if that's just kind of the way this DIY thing was put together. So just know that when you get this game, you are not getting a super professional, polished, mass market thing. You are getting something that one guy created, and just temper your expectations going in knowing that. But when we get to part 8 here, beginning play and overview, this is kind of where you want to start on page 27 with the rules and getting going. Now, I did have to order some additional cards from Dino recently, and he sent them to me. And with the cards, he sent this really handy quick start guide. And I wish this was included in the book. It might be in later Kickstarter editions. But this is a really handy guide to getting started. So I'm just going to go through this just so you guys kind of know how if you get the game, how you would want to start. So step 1 is to take out your character sheet. So if you have a character sheet, you can get these on BGG. They are in the first edition listing. I don't think they are in the second edition listing. It's kind of hard to find the sheets that you need, but they are out there. Okay, so then you're going to take your character sheet and turn to page 29, and that's going to have your creating your character section. That's going to be the start of that, so that's really handy. You're going to take this is 20-sided dice, but actually it's 2 10-sided dice, and you're going to roll for your stats. And you have a number of stats that you're going to roll. Everything in this game, I think, is dictated by a D100 roll, so it's going to be percentile chances to do things. Then you're going to get a bonus pool of points to increase your characteristics as you go. One interesting thing this game does is you are going to have it's kind of a governor on your stats, depending on what you roll for your 7 stats. If you roll really low, you're going to automatically add some points. If you roll really high, you're going to subtract some points. So it's going to create kind of a nice middle ground where you're not going to be too terrible or super great in any of the stats, just to kind of give you more of a balanced start to the game. Then you're going to assign a character name and race, and the different races will have different bonuses or negatives applied to them. Step 4, you're going to have silver and gold, so each character is going to have starting silver and gold. And then you can also roll for your background. There is a huge number of background charts for humans, for dwarfs, for elves, and for native overlanders and halflings. So those are going to be your different backgrounds. If you don't want to create a background, you can just roll on one of those and it'll give you some role-playing tips there. Then you're going to purchase your starting weapons, food, and supplies. There is kind of some survival elements in this game. As you are traveling, you're going to have to be eating food, feeding your NPC followers. If you don't, they will start to have negative effects of malnutrition. You're going to actually start with some XP, some experience, and the game has like a dual XP system where you get experience as you level up, and then each time you level up, you get experience points to spend on new skills and developing your pre-existing skills. You can purchase traits. There are traits that are in addition to your skills, and there are also classes. You don't really start as a class in this game, but you can work your way up to a different class. You're going to roll your starting background, lay out your map, separate your encounter cards, and then begin playing. And the overall arc of the game is there are 5 different objectives. Okay, so these are the things that you're going to be working towards as you are playing the game. You won't always be working towards these, but these are kind of like your long goals. These are the things that are going to be developing as a campaign is played. So you want to capture and obtain the 5 weapons of power. You want to acquire gold to raise an army. You want to recruit allies. You want to overthrow the king of Overland. I'm not sure why yet. And defeat the Warden Mordecai. A warden in this game is kind of like a sorcerer. So those are the things you're going to be focusing on while you are playing. A session is basically going to be played out in 2 weeks. So I made this like calendar sheet where you're going to be keeping track of your days and your weeks. And certain things are going to happen on days and certain things are going to happen on weeks. There is a very important element to this game to keeping track of time, because things will happen as you are building establishments, or things take time to transpire throughout the game. So you do need to keep track of your time. And basically what you're going to do on a turn here is you're going to pull an event card. So there is a small deck of event cards, and these are going to be, each one is going to be drawn once per week. You're going to draw one of these event cards, and that's going to kind of give you something to focus on or avoid or attack, or something to do during that week. Now, one of the things about this game is the font on the cards is very small and very weird and hard to read. That is especially true in the encounter cards. I have a very difficult time reading some of this text, and we'll take a look at those at the encounter cards, which are especially difficult to read. But he really crammed a lot of text. I don't mind the amount of text, but the font can make it very difficult to read. But there's stuff like a slave market. That's unfortunate. But yeah, I guess some bad stuff happens in the Overland. There's a plague, taxes, layoffs, fox hunts, famine, road repairs. Man, okay, that sounds like a lot of mundane things. So that's kind of like you're gonna have to deal with some stuff in the Overland as you are adventuring. Every day you're going to have to pick one of these weather cards. And these will also dictate what you can do during the day, because they might limit travel, they might make travel easier, that kind of thing. Storms, rain, ice, nice clear skies. So yeah, different kind of things you're going to have to deal with, environmental things you're going to have to deal with on a daily basis. And then you're going to choose your daily actions. And every day you can do a number of actions. You can rest to heal wounds. You can travel from one hex to the next. You can engage in battle. As you approach towns and castles, you can do town activities like seeking an audience with the mayor or the king. You can gather news and information, hire help, buy and sell. You can work at jobs. There are a number of different jobs that you can do to work at to get money and experience. You can build and repair stuff, like you can build and repair roads, towns, castles, monuments, or you can practice and train. Then you're going to commit to one of those actions. If you're traveling, you need to roll to see if you get lost, if you are moving from one hex to a new type of hex, a new type of terrain. And then as you are leaving one hex, you need to roll to see if you have an encounter. And if you do, you're going to draw from this massive deck of encounters. And these are all kinds of different things, from little events to mostly these are going to be NPCs that you're going to face against. And then you will have to roll on a chart to see, if that NPC is kind, is inviting, is accepting, or is non-hostile, I'm trying to say, or if they're hostile. If you can hire them, if you need to attack them, if you can avoid them. And they are going to appear somewhere on the map, usually like 1 or 2 to 3 spots, hexes adjacent to where you are. And this is where the text gets really difficult to read, especially like some of the line spacing is off on like the stats, and the numbers overlap. Just making it very difficult to make out a lot of the times. And some of the cards are just actually absolutely jam-packed with text, and some of the, I'm not sure the name of like the font pieces, but the overlaps, they hang over and into each other's lines. Like the line spacing just needs to be more. It can be very difficult to read, and there is a lot of text on these cards, but these are just going to be different things that you are going to be having to deal with as you roll encounters. So there are encounter tables in the book, and there are also this huge, just huge number of encounters. And there's going to be a lot more encounter decks as stretch goals and things that you can add on and purchase if you are interested in the game. All right, so then you're going to travel, check for an encounter. You're going to eat a meal, and then having your nighttime. And then once a month, so every 4 weeks, you need to roll for your dragon. Excuse me. And the dragon is going to be moving throughout the land. It's kind of a mobile threat. And for me, for my dragon, I made these wooden chips here. I drew a little picture of a dragon. I'm going to be using this huge stack of wooden markers and tokens and things to keep track of things on the board. My little character is this guy here, Adventurer Andy. I just drew on a little meeple. I drew a little sea serpent here. And I was going to draw a horse, but the horse ended up looking more like a dog. So hopefully we can find a dog, and then I can use this token as my dog. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to give a broad overview of the game, and that's what this is. As you progress through, you're going to be going through your different characters, the races, the backgrounds, and then things kind of you start getting into the nitty-gritty of the rules with movement, different terrain effects like hills, the plains, ice, mountains, swamps. Swamps have their own encounters. Then you have all of these different cards. The card decks are called chance cards. We already went over each of those. There are traps and locks. There's all kinds of different supplies you can buy, different kinds of clothing and meals, miscellaneous supplies, different kinds of tools that can be used. It's super, super detailed. You can fish, you can hunt. There are different hunting tables. Like I said, there are different jobs. You can be a doctor, a minstrel, a worker, a mapper, a historian, a serf. There are different ways of gaining wealth, different animals, marriage and divorce. You can practice and train. You can build and take over strongholds, building wars. You can build property. You can purchase different hexes and keep track of the things that you own. You do have to pay taxes. Yeah, there's just a lot to this game, and it can be pretty overwhelming. Here's a whole like super detailed chart about different NPCs that you can meet and hire. Then as you start moving, as you start playing, as you start moving into towns and different areas, then you're going to turn to this book, turn to that area to see the details of what you need to do in that area. So in some ways, you know, it is like a game, kind of like a video game like Skyrim. It's wide open. You can go and do whatever you want. You're going to be focusing on those objectives. It is also kind of like Barbarian Prince in a way. That was one of the major influences, where as you are moving through the hex, you know, you're going to be looking up lookup tables on here to determine what happens. And I did want to show you real quick, if I can find it really quickly, the different objectives. Yeah, so the first objective probably is one of the weapons of power. So objective 1 is capture the 5 weapons of power. And that is on page 438. So you can kind of read through these objectives here to kind of help you plan your map out your venture. So I went ahead and I made these little tokens here on these dry erase tokens for each of the different weapons of power. And then I'm going to place those on the map where they are, so that way I can kind of plan where I want to go. You have the blood blade. You get a nice little history of the blood blade, what it does and where it can be found, and what you need to do when you get there to find it. So you have a blood blade, you have the emerald cross, the resurrection ring, the bow of light, and the peaceful palms. Then your next objective will be to acquire gold and raise an army. So there are rules for big, massive scale battles. And then you want to recruit different allies. You want to overthrow the king of Overland. And then finally, you want to defeat the evil wizard or warden Mordecai. As you can see, so right there's a discrepancy in the table of contents. He calls him a warden, but here it says wizard and that kind of thing. So there are some issues. There are some quality control issues that are unfortunate. One of those I found was I was going to be an Overlander as my character, and it tells you to turn to a certain section. Let me find that. So it says so all native Overlanders begin play at King's Castle, that's a hex on the map, and have a 50% King's Castle magic. See studying magic, okay? So I looked in the index and there was nothing under S for studying magic. So I was like, okay, well, where do I look? So I started looking through the table of contents, and there was nothing really about studying magic. However, there is a thing where when you go to town, you have a chance to study. So I figured that was probably it. So I turned to that section. And then once I turned to that section, then you have to find another section about magic weapons, magic enhancements and enchantments and that kind of thing. So it can be a little much to find where you need to look in this massive book. So I guess if you really want to get into this game, approach it with some patience. One of the things I am most interested in, and I am going to take my character down this route, is becoming a pirate. The pirate guild seems really cool. I want to become like a pirate thief and have my own island out in the seas where I can build my little pirate base and travel the seas with a ship moving around from coast to coast. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. So, all right, well, that was a kind of a brief overview look at Journey to the Overland, not getting into the nitty-gritty of the rules and how that works. We will take a closer look at some of the details in the next video, and as well as my character who I'm going to be creating to play in this game. So all right guys, well, I hope you enjoyed that, and we will talk to you later. Bye bye.